Meantime, one of the frustrations that we had at the very start of not this, but last year, was when the Prime Minister went to Alice Springs. Now, remember, he was dragged kicking and screaming. He didn't want to be there. Now, he didn't want to be there, so the press conferences were all held behind closed doors and everyone was looking the other way. He was there, literally, for a couple of hours, and he literally spent more time flying to the territory than he spent in the territory, because his real priority for the way to start 2023 was to bugger off the tennis. Not for one night, but for, of course, 3 nights. Copping his cheers back then and boos this year. And the reason it has changed is because Australians have had enough of his leadership. Remember, as we have shown you multiple times, Reserve Political Monitor. This is the one that comes from the left-wing websites of the Channel 9 newspapers. It shows that 51% of people believe the Prime Minister's performance to be poor or very poor. That's the reality today. And the Prime Minister's run between now and December, it's not going to get any better. Why? Because guess who's coming back? Airbus Albo. Now, fresh from all of the problems when he was flying around the world too much at the start of his Prime Ministership, and then he tried to pull his head in towards the back part of last year, and for most of this year, he's about to jump back on the plane. The next place he's going to be off to is he's going to be going to Tonga for a Pacific Islands Forum. No one will begrudge a Prime Minister doing that. Australia plays a significant role in leadership in and around these areas. But I do love the people that were even writing about this itinerary who were saying, oh, anyone who complains about this is sort of small-minded, doesn't understand. No, the reason we have complained about it is because he nicknames the plane after his dog. He is so familiar and happy to be somewhere else other than Australia because, again, by his own rules, he doesn't have to answer questions about Australia. Well, during 2023, when he thought that politics would be distracted by The Voice, cost of living and its reality became a massive issue towards the end of the year, so much so that almost 70-something, almost 80% of people said the government wasn't doing enough. That's why he spent a summer trying to reset, a budget trying to buy votes with billions of dollars. But as we now sit towards the back half of August of 2024, things are just as bad, if not worse, for many people around the country. Yet right now is when the Prime Minister is going to fly around the world. Here's some of the places he's going to be going. I read directly from the account that was in the Sydney Morning Herald. He's going to go to the inauguration of the Indonesian Prime Minister. He's going to go to the CHOGM meeting in Samoa. He's going to go to the East Asia Summit in Laos. He's going to go to the APEC meeting. Remember the last one was in San Francisco where they magically got rid of all of the homeless people? The Chinese, of course, were attacking members of our Defence Force, but our Prime Minister was sucking up to the Chinese president, hoping that nobody would notice. Well, we did. That's in Peru. Then there's the G20 summit in Brazil, and then there's a Quad leaders meeting in India. I'd say maybe, the only one that he really needs to go to is the Quad. The rest of it, well, of course, is him pretending to be the big boy on the international stage. And, geez, didn't that work out for Joe Biden? It will not work out for Anthony Albanese, again, because Airbus Albo is a symbol. It's a symbol of priorities. And if the priority is to bugger off, and to bugger off as many times as is planned between now and the end of the year, while cost of living squeeze is tighter than ever before, well, it doesn't just underline the perceptions. It makes the perceptions true about what the priorities are. Now, remember, in 2023, when it was all about The Voice and Airbus Albo, they took $1,500 away from 10 million workers in the low to middle income tax offset. 12 months later, they gave you too little, too late in the form of tax cuts, particularly for people earning around $45,000, about $15 a week. The expectation between now and December is that nothing will happen with the Reserve Bank. If anything happens, it's more likely to go up than it is to go down. Other international markets may start going down, but remember, our inflation is higher than in places like the United States or the United Kingdom, both of which claim that inflation is one of the, if not biggest, issues. In an election that saw a government change in the United Kingdom, or is the reason why it may well change, or even the deputy of the government currently running for the presidency, the vice president, is trying to pretend she's not involved in that government. Why? Because anyone associated with inflation or the economy, well, they would sink like a stone, hence the remaking of Kamala Harris from Joe Biden's loyal deputy to Obama in a pantsuit. Meantime, even the people who love the Prime Minister, or would love him to stick around, I should say, they're saying that time is running out in terms of the Parliament for him to actually be able to deliver on promises. Take your pick. Aged care reform. Now, supposedly a deal's been done. There will, of course, be no lifetime cap. That was the latest in negotiations. We'll find out what gets leaked this week for anyone who's trying to pay an aged care package at home. With how strong the gambling advertising will be, the political donation system, will they limit the amount of money that the Teals can raise and spend going into the next election, or because they're headed towards minority, will it all be put off for another 3 years? Don't get me started on housing and renting. The religious discrimination bill they're not going to touch. They are, of course, going to do everything they can to tighten things on the environment, and, of course, more bureaucracy in and around climate change. The hate speech legislation, again, that won't get off the ground. What about mining? What about the Reserve Bank? What about childcare? What about aviation? Watch this space. Time is running out, metaphorically and literally. But the Prime Minister, well, he again wants to change the subject. If he's not buggering off overseas, he's having chats about his broken heart from way back when. This is when, of course, he was talking about when his marriage had broken down, and all of that, of course, is a distraction from the real issue of the past 2 weeks. Again, I wish the man no personal ill will, but I couldn't care less about the personal backstory. Get on with the real deal. Get on along with protecting our national borders, which includes rigorous screenings for any and anyone who comes over that border. For 2 weeks, he couldn't tell us whether he agreed that verbal support for Hamas was a reason to come or go from the country. Pretty obvious answer, regardless of what you think of what's happening on the other side of the world. And then, interestingly, as the lefties tried to turn around and say the past couple of weeks have been horrible, ugly, dirty, racist, Dutton took 25 steps back. Well, David Pemberthy, of course, Adelaide radio host, he wrote in the papers over the weekend that the other thing that people such as Steggall don't get is that concerns about crowding and cultural shifts from sudden surges in immigration are at their most acute in the blue-collar suburbs where new migrants congregate. Exactly what we've been saying for a couple of years. Zali Steggall will need a compass and a packed lunch to find these suburbs. If Anthony Albanese allows himself to be wedded to this issue, he's going to be in massive strife. Losing a referendum is one thing, losing an election something else. The PM needs to change the subject, and fast. His capacity to do so has not been seen to this point, even with billions of dollars in too little, too late tax cuts and $25 a month off a power bill that has already surged more than $25.